Hey everybody, it's Secondhand Dan coming to you from my penny pincher land here in Pittsburgh. I'm in my shop right now. I thought maybe I'd just air a little beef I have with a product that I was working with the other day. So it's no biggie, it's something, but it just seems to be, par for the course as far as a lot of manufacturers and their workmanship, the quality control. It used to be when you bought a name brand, you were buying, several clicks above the generic. But now a lot of times you buy a name brand, you're just buying the generic with the name brand on it. A lot of these name brand companies say, hey, well, they're selling those so cheap and, we're losing sales out. Let's just lower our standards, call up the cheap manufacturer and say, hey, we want to order, 100,000 or a million of those units only. Instead of putting El Crapo on them, put the name brand, our name on them, and we will take them and we will sell them as our own name brand. So case in point, I am working with a Dremel tool, or rather I was working with a Dremel tool. So the Dremel tool that got me a little bit fired up here is this one. I mean, it's a nice looking tool. It operated rather well. It is the Dremel motor tool. Motor tool model number 395. So I was using it. I installed this sanding disc and I was sanding around a piece of brass to try and decrease its diameter a little bit. And for some reason, I backed the tool off. I figured, okay, let me set it down and let me shut it off. Well, I pulled this button down by mistake. Can we get our focus in here? I pulled this down. There we go. I pulled this down inadvertently thinking I was hitting the power switch, not remembering that it was the lock the Arbor switch. So it's not like I cranked on it. I just went, zzz, oops, wrong switch. Turn it over here and shut it off. So after doing that, I thought nothing of it. So I'm trying to put this thing away in the case here. I'm not a fan of cases. A lot of times I just ditch the case on my power tools, but the case in question here is a Dremel case. So I go to put it in said Dremel case. I'm like, okay, now we got to get the cord in, snug enough, tight enough. You got to take your time, fold it up, caress it gently. Make sure you don't make a double loop with a bulge in it. If you don't get it just right. Now that looks just right, doesn't it? Okay. It doesn't want to close. Okay, so that's a beef. Why does it not want to close? I don't know. These parts here are pushing down on there. So I'm like, okay, why is it pushing down on there? Well, because I don't know. I tried to turn it around and close the case. It's still got a bulgy in the middle where it doesn't want to close. So they make these cases with such close tolerances, there's no room for error. And then I realized also, well, maybe it's because I still have the tool bit in there. They don't make any allowance for you to leave the tool bit in because it starts to creep up the side. So I said, well, I better take the tool bit out. Maybe that'll make it easier to get it back in storage. So lo and behold, I have to take the tool bit out. Got to get my little wrench here. Pull down on this to lock the Arbor in place, and nothing. It just spins around, and I can feel it under my thumb going bump, 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 bump. no matter which way I turn it. It doesn't get loose or any more loose or any tighter. Oh, geez, I must have stripped out the tiny gear that they put in there. And like I said, it's not like I went, ugh! No, I went, oops, when it was running, because I thought it was the off switch for a brief moment. We're all capable of making a little mistake like that. So come to realize then, it's not just a matter of getting it in the case this time. It's about, I'm going to want to change bits in the future when using this. So, well, let me do a little exploratory surgery. And I'm thinking, well, it shouldn't have come to a ground off whatever's in there just by doing that. Because you got circular saws that have the same principle. There's a button you push down to change the blade, to hold the blade in place, the arbor in place, while you take the nut off your circular saw. You know, and I really don't make that mistake, but I think maybe once over my years, I'm sure occasionally I might have went zzz and accidentally hit it, whether intentionally or accidentally. But I've never had a problem with a circular saw that didn't bite into place and lock it down. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have to do something, or this is completely useless. So I go to take it apart. First issue I know is all the screws are so rusty. How do they get rusty when they're buried deep in plastic? Because they use cheaper ingredients. This thing here is, it says Dremel Division of Emerson Electric Company, Racine, Wisconsin, USA. It doesn't say made in USA. It could have been it, but even if it is, technically they buy majority of their parts from China anyway. Well, along with the rust on that, rust on the hanging loop. So I had to wrestle that out. We thought this thing was in a flood, and it wasn't. So get the 4 screws out. They came out, you know, even though they're covered with rust, they came out easily. I mean, no bones about it. This tool is working good, and it still will work. But if I can't swap the bit out, it's a loss. So I said, well, taking this apart. Well, isn't the next thing I take this collar off? It won't come off. I've had this thing in a vise with a pair of pliers on it. Show you my vise over here. That's no slouch when it comes to being a vise. And I didn't want to, I'm not about to put a pipe wrench on the thing, but you know, it just has another set of hands, so to speak. I put it in the vise, got my pliers on this collar, and this collar does not want to come undone. It's like, is it glued on there? I don't know. I have another Dremel tool that's even, it unscrews with your hands. So I'm like, I can't get in there. Maybe I'm going to have to take a heat gun to it and see if that softens it up or something like that. But just for the heck of it, I said, well, let me try and pry this open. I started to pull it open just so I could see something. And you can see the motor, and I see rust on it. All right, well, I guess the next thing I got to do is maybe wave a heat gun out at this. But I'm not even sure, once I get this apart, what can I do to actually save it? It's not like I've got an extra gear or something like that. I was thinking, well, maybe is there a way to create a hole in here where I can insert a screwdriver when I need to lock it up to change the bit. Otherwise, like I said, the tool's useless because I can't change the bit. So let me get the heat gun out and see if we can get this collar off to get further into this. So hold on a moment. All right, well, here's the Black & Decker heating strip. Just a simple 110. I'm going to plug it in and wave it around this collar and see if it doesn't free it up. So I don't know what else to do. Okay, give me a couple minutes here. I'll get back to you. Okay, I've waved the heat gun all around it. Let's try it again with the pair of pliers. My concern is now it's going to be so soft, it'll just come off in chunks. But I say it's at the point where it's going to be useless if I can't somehow get inside and alter it. There it goes. There it goes. It's turning. That is awfully sticky. So I don't know why it was on there so tight, but the heat gun was the secret to getting that collar off. All right, let's open it up. You know, it would have made at least a little sense if they had put a place where you could get a second wrench on there for allowing for the failure of this. All right, well. Oh, okay, well, the popped open and the Arbor just jumped right out. So I can see now. I guess it's this part here. That's supposed to engage with this lever out here and bring this thing to a stop. So it's not. It looks like at one time, I don't know, maybe somebody else, this might have been a used unit, but maybe somebody else had also contributed to the downfall. But like I said, maybe I can just drill a hole through the case and I'll be able to intersect that gear with a small screwdriver. So that's my next plan of attack. I do see a tiny little bearing there. Maybe it can need a drop of oil while I'm in here. Well, speaking of the Arbor, look at all the rust on there. I mean, you would think this thing had been in a flood, but I'm sure that's just from ambient air, ambient humidity, because they decided, you know, let's use a lower grade steel rather than add a little nickel to it or whatever to help it keep it from rusting. We'll go with the cheapest possible ingredients. It's usually about the ingredients with a lot of these manufacturers. They're like, hey, if we're making 10,000 gallons of something, and that 10,000 gallons costs us $50,000, if we back off on some of the zinc or the nickel or the platinum, whatever they could drop in there, and it might only be a handful of something. They say, you know, if we eliminate that, instead of costing us $50,000, we might get this vat of ingredient down to $45,000. So that's most of your manufacturers, their big objective is to cheapen and cheapen and cheapen their product, yet still pass theirself off as name brand. I'd rather pay more knowing that the name brand is ultimately always going to outperform the lesser brands. But you don't have that anymore. You can buy a name brand and it might be equal to the generic. So let me go ahead and drill a hole in this case and see if we can use a screwdriver to hold the Arbor in place. I'm pretty sure the reason that collar, to get it off, I had to use the heat gun. Why it was so tough getting it off was because I think the rust on it made it swell this middle part swell and make the collar even tighter. I'm trying to figure out where exactly I'm going to drill this hole in here. It has to be somewhere where, you know, from this backside, so I can get in there and intersect something like this screwdriver with it to keep it from turning, so I can undo that arbor. So let me do a little math on this so I get the hole in the best possible location. Okay, well, using a set of calipers, slide rule calipers, I'm measuring from where this arbor rests in a groove down to the middle of this cog, the stop. So, and then I'm taking that measurement over to this other half, and that tells me it's going to go, the hole's going to go right in there. So let me drill it. So we want to drill a little hole so I can fish a tool through from the other side and block that shaft from turning. So I said a little hole. Let's drill a little hole. All right, well, I'm going to clamp this to the vise, but not in the vise, because it'll be pop right out. But I'm using it kind of like a V block. So I'm going to use a clamp here to hold it in place, just for, you know, it's soft plastic. I'm going to drill a little hole. I changed my bit up, so we're saving a Dremel. Okay, because I had nothing to lose. Like I said, if I don't do this, can't change the bit. Okay. Hole is drilled. So now I'll be able to plunge a small screwdriver inside, which will engage with this and keep it from turning while I put a wrench up on the arbor. I wonder if I should just make that a slight bit larger, especially if this is going to be the average tool. Now, don't want it too big, don't want it too small. Just the size of a cannonball. Yeah, that's good enough. That works its way in. Okay, so now it's a matter of reassembly. This has a tab on it that goes into there. All right, all right, all right. And that's simple. The cover goes back on now. And time to put the 4 screws to it. Now this Dremel takes the Torx bit driver. That is a number T15. Okay. Mr. T. Always remember that plastic screws are largely different than a lot of your other screws. They tend to be a coarser thread. It's hard to tell on something this small, but when you get into bigger plastic screws, they almost start to look like corkscrews. So they don't strip out as easily in the plastic. Screw number 2. I know the last recordings I've used my microphone, clip-on microphone, but I haven't been able to find that in the past week, so that's the problem when you have a lot of possessions. It's hard to keep track of them. I'm hoping it turns up soon. I kind of like that little guy, so when I can walk away from the camera and you can still hear my narration without it sounding distant. Four screws in, double check them for snugness. There we go. I just like to hold my tool kind of like this, not like that when you're working with plastic, so you can just feel the right amount of torque. Okay, here's this bad boy that gave me problems. See if it doesn't go on easier than it came off. Maybe I should have sanded that shaft a little bit, taking off some of that swelling, but I didn't think it was going to be an issue. It shouldn't be. Come on. Of course, it was a little softer on its way off. All right, give me a moment. Well, to keep it real, I'm having a difficult time getting this on. I'm going to pop those screws back out and actually sand that Arbor that I say it was probably swollen with a little bit of rust. But so undoing the 4 screws. You hate to take these kind of screws in and out, because like I say, you're working with plastic and they could strip, but well, nobody's life is depending on whether or not I strip a screw on this thing. Oop, don't want to lose it. I've got my wire wheel over there. Maybe I'll just buff some of that rust off on the soft wire wheel. I said it's the rust over on this. So let me take you over to the wire wheel. All right, well, I just got done wire brushing this unit. So the more you work on a piece of product like this, ooh, the more disillusioned you come with, is it worth it? But sometimes you just want to go ahead and forge on so you can say, I got through it. I did it. It's done. So the wire brush definitely cleaned it up, but it's still kind of ugly looking. Let's see how that sits. Well, instead of putting the screws in first, I'll put the collar on first. See if it's still an issue. I know the collar is a little bit warped, but that shouldn't be enough to stop it because it came off warped. There it goes, right? It's going back in, on, in. Pliers out on it. All right, I think that's close enough. Feels like it turns free. Tighten up the screws, the T15 screws. I'm really disappointed in making videos with my cell phone because So often, and when I inadvertently hit the stop button and have to start another recording when I really just want to make it one long continuous recording, hitting the pause button occasionally, but you hit the stop button, then I'm trying to splice two videos together, and I haven't mastered editing by any means. I'm a long way off from getting better at editing, and I haven't got a friend or a family member that's eager to help me out, or if I can't even find a friend or family member that knows editing. All right, well, screwdriver goes in here. Oh, screwdriver. Go in there. There we go. Okay, I do feel some engagement here. It's still going to be a pain in the butt to change the bit by this means every time, but you need the tool to save the day sometimes. Okay, now get my wrench. I am not feeling it. There we go. All right, well, the tool will live another day. Not sure how long, how patient I'll be to continue to change bits that way, but where it was completely worthless, now it's at least worth hanging on to. Especially if I got a dirty, nasty job and I don't want to use my better Dremel. The reason I have a better one is I think I bought the better one. Let me show it to you. When I didn't have the second-hand one, so I might pick the second-hand one up at a yard sale or flea market, but here's the nice one. And I say this collar up here comes off real easy. Adjustable speed. There's it's a push button. You push it in. The shaft ain't turned. There we go. You feel drop in when you got it right. So all right, well, show you what I'm working on here. The reason I even had to get the Dremel out was I was working on this lamp. Now, my grandson was here a couple days ago, and he's only like 18 months old. So I'm not mad at him or anything, but this is not how this lamp looked. It had a glass shade on it, and it was hanging down, and this was sitting on the floor in the other room, and he knocked it over and broke the shade. So I figured, let's go ahead and rework this thing and make it a little more interesting. It didn't have a gauge on it, didn't have all these other pipes. It had a different way of hanging the light bulb. So everything you see on the upper section here is me. I added that on. The original stopped right there. They had that valve, that was them. And I changed up the footage, the feetage, where they had left, right, and center. This, I had to change it and make it longer with a different fitting so as to stabilize it, because what I've added on top is making it even more heavy, would be more unstable with the smaller feet. So I needed the Dremel because I was downsizing. This is brass here. I was trying to downsize it to get it to thread into this And that's why I had to get the Dremel out for this job. And it did the job, and then I tried to put it away. It was frustrating, and I figured, oh, well, let's take the bit back out, and I found out the bit wouldn't come out because it wouldn't lock in place, and yada, yada, yada. Make a long story short, that's why we're at where we're at right now. But it's been interesting. Thanks for putting up with my rant. A lot of you probably saying, don't rant, just do the job. Just say, hey, fixing a Dremel. You don't have to rant about workmanship or quality, but I'll try not to do that too often, but just wanted to get something off my chest once in a while. All right, well, right now my son Kenneth is calling. He has a Subaru. We're going to go change the fuel pump on it. His wife was driving home the other day, and it quit on her on the way home. And fortunately, YouTube was a lifesaver. You know, it just said, there's some latches. Take out the back seat and take the cover off and bang on it with a hammer and see if your vehicle don't start up again. And it did. So that told us it's the fuel pump, and that was enough to get him home. And so it's going to happen again if we don't change the fuel pump. So we're going to do that now. So bye, everybody. Thank you for spending time with Secondhand Dan here in Penny Pincher Land in the workshop. Bye.